what company it was. I think it was Eli Lilly, which some hacker, no, not hacker, someone posed as Eli and Lilly. This is a pharmaceutical company, and said that they're going to be selling insulin at like for free or something, or at least at a lower price, and their stock price went down. If I owned Eli Lilly, I wouldn't have cared, because I would have believed in Eli Lilly. I would have believed and understood Eli Lilly. So what someone on the internet says about their insulin, I wouldn't care at all. And if you look up Peter Lynch's speech, he explains it in a very comedic way. It's very fun. It's very fun and interesting the way he explains it. But I think it's still a fascinating question. People buy stocks, and when they go down, they buy stocks, and then they forget that they can go down. You know what I mean? Like, because I'm not saying it didn't happen to me. It happened to me. That's why I find it so interesting. What did you expect to happen? Like, what do you do? He said, like Peter Lynch will say, what do? You walk around the corner, you flip a nickel, you call your mom and ask her how low can it go? Like, what do? You should know what to do. And that's part of it. And then that is part of his philosophy, and it's helped me, I'll say. I'm pretty sure I can legally say everything I was talking about as long as I don't tell you to go invest in some company. I'll talk a little bit about another book, Learn to Earn, and I'll just sum this up. Self-advancement and improvement and wanting was a foreign concept back in the Middle Ages, right? If you said I want this, or I want a good life, people would look at you crazy, because that was just not something people did. The only things you got in your life were things passed down to you by lineage, inheritance. And so basically, back in the day, kingdoms would have someone, and they would figure out how much they should produce of each thing, right? Because God forsake, they let people just make whatever they want to. Because like, what if like everyone decides to make clothes instead of food? Then everyone would die of starvation, right? So back in the Middle Ages, kingdoms would plan for how much they had to produce of each good, and so they wouldn't produce too much of one good. And a Scotsman, I can't remember his name unfortunately, but a Scotsman, eventually he came up with this concept, and he said, listen, you don't actually need to plan what you produce, because naturally people will produce, it was basically, yes, is it possible for someone to make all clothes and no food? The Scotsman said basically, I don't remember his name, unfortunately. It's really sad. He basically said, listen, that will never happen because there's something called the invisible hand, right? There is this invisible hand which will make sure that there are never too much of one good's never made. And of course there is no invisible hand, but he uses that analogy to explain how the supply and demand works. If everyone makes clothes, naturally clothes will become so inexpensive that someone's going to do something else and probably make food, because that they can make much more money on that. And so naturally, this invisible hand will make sure not too much of one good's never made. And fortunately for us, that book was released, I believe, 2 years after the United States was formed. And so our economic ideas were pulled strongly from a book called The Wealth of Nations. It has a much longer title than that, but we just call it The Wealth of Nations. And so you get to learn history like that. I think it's truly interesting. As well as it talks about Karl Marx, who was living in the UK, even though he was German, I believe. And he wrote this book because he would go to these factories every day in these horrible conditions, right? Horrible conditions in horrible factories. And he said that he basically predicted that as technology advances, this is just going to get worse and worse for us. And eventually the working people are going to overthrow the government. And well, unfortunately for him, he was just wrong. As technology advanced, the working conditions got better, and each individual person was valued much more for their time, and so he was just wrong. And actually, the people that adopted Karl Marx's ideas were actually the countries where the workers rose up. Communist countries and countries that adopted his philosophies are actually the countries where the workers rose up against the government, not in countries that didn't follow his principles. So he was just wrong. But some people don't believe it still. But that's fine. And in truth, Karl Marx's ideals, well, they're not, in theory, they're not wrong, but in any kind of practice, their result is never good. What's it called? The living conditions of countries that were, the living condition of countries that followed Karl Marx's ideals was lower than countries that didn't. And basically there are two things people will say to that. They did it wrong, or it doesn't work. Either one. Maybe they did it wrong. Maybe it doesn't work. Both are acceptable ideas. Regardless, yeah, I mean, oh, they didn't do it right. Maybe it just doesn't work. Both acceptable. I mean, let's try them out. But I will say this: if countries that didn't try, if countries that are capitalist, right, capitalist countries, they seem to do well a lot more. They seem to do well without any need for a modification. So it seems if you had a country, like, just based on numbers, it would just be better, smarter to just make it capitalist. Maybe you can do Karl Marx's ideals in a way which works. Maybe you can do it in a way that works, but like, yeah. Learn to Earn also talks about the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission. and talks about how basically this, the stock market police, and that allows you to believe a little bit more in the system. Also, Peter Lynch, he talks about he went to college, but he didn't take accounting and business. Instead, he opted. Instead, he opted. Instead, he opted to take political science, philosophy, and psychology, stuff like that. Because knowing that stuff is way more vital to stock picking than business and accounting. If you can do 5th grade math, if you can add, subtract, divide, and multiply, if you got that down, you need one more part. You just need the right mindset. And I remember there's this ad on YouTube that said, because whenever you look up anything on Google, YouTube just spams you with those ads. And thankfully, I had been very immersed in stock market knowledge and ideas and theories. And so all those ads don't work on me. Like, it's like when I was like, what if you could make money off one symbol, one ticker? And I'm like, no. No, that's dumb. While in theory that would work, Peter Lynch states as well that picking one stock isn't safe, because there are circumstances that can happen to the stock that are just out of its control. So picking one stock, while in theory would work, it is just unsafe. Something that's on the something can happen that's in no way the company's fault, and now you're out big. It's just that's a no. And some people will be like, what if you can make money, you can make 1,000 times your money in one day? And they're like, no, get out of here. No, nope. It's like, yeah, sure, yeah, if only. You can't though. Peter Lynch also talks about one of Wall Street about day trading, and he talks about not day trading. He talks about options, and he says, "Well, I don't really know much about options, and he doesn't really care to use them, and I don't either. I don't worry about them. I don't care." And he says options, in a way, is instead of opting to get rich slowly, you get poor quickly. And they are complicated to understand. So options, I don't worry about options. I don't care. How am I not hitting you? There's no way you give a shield up. There's no way. Yeah. It looked like the shield, he was blocking with a shield while he was firing arrows. Not to say options are bad. Like for example, a covered call is a very safe and conservative way to make money over the long run. But I just don't worry about options. A covered call or a bear call spread or volatility trading are all, I guess, fine, but I just don't worry about them. Wow. Stab? Wow. Need to rest and stuff. I did not want to do a stab there. But stab a lot of food. It's good. You get some renown from this. I forgot the one crucial rule of battles like this. You have to always look out. You always have to look out for the lancers. I need to kill, so I really can't before I join in. I'll like, you can get like 20%. Oh, there we go. That works. Now my horse is slow. Could have died. No, my horse didn't die. I died. Why are you slow? The chance that I die here is pretty high. Like here. Getting stopped is like a death sentence. Any Lancer can come. Wow. Any Lancer can come up and just absolutely destroy you. Oh, I was just gonna hit that horse for no reason, but then you came. But yeah, I recommend listening to One Up on Wall Street. I think it's a pretty fun book, at least. If you want to learn about stocks, it's a great book. A great book. You can listen to it free on Spotify, YouTube. It's really good. So yeah, there's another book Peter Lynch wrote with, I don't remember the other author, unfortunately. I think it's like John Rothschild or something, but it's written by two authors, not just by Peter Lynch alone. That book, One Up on Wall Street, is voiced by Peter Lynch, while learn to earn is voice.